Welcome to the MLS Basement. I'm your host, the Chief from the Cincy PostCast. Since we're on YouTube, I think I'm legally required to ask you to both like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Post Cincy. You'll get all the latest videos, updates, whatever it is we choose to post on here. You're going to want to see it. Why? Because I've looked at other MLS content out there, and let's just say it's not the Post. The MLS Basement, which I am sitting in currently, is going to be your source to learn what's going on in MLS, 3 top-line takeaways that you need to know about this league, narratives and whatnot, for those of you that just casually pay attention to MLS. So without further ado, let's kick it off for MLS Matchweek number 1. We start episode 1 of match number 1 with the ongoing labor dispute between the PSRA and the PRO. The PSRA being the union that represents MLS officials, PRO being the organization that employs MLS officials, and MLS being the awkward husband in the corner, watching the drama unfold and hoping things heat up pretty soon. PRO has locked out the PSRA, meaning we started this week with replacement officials. Now, if you're an NFL fan, you remember how well the last time this went when we had replacement officials in a major sport. The term Fail Mary seems to ring around these parts, as everyone remembers what can go horribly wrong when the officials don't know what they're doing. Unfortunately for PSRA, I'd make the argument that MLS officials usually don't know what's going on, and what that led to this weekend was pretty much business as usual. To my eye, watching these games, I didn't see much of a difference between the replacement officials and the PRO-PSRA officials that usually work MLS matches. And I went back and actually did the numbers on this, and the numbers bear this out. And over the course of match week number 1 in 2023, there were 24.5 fouls called on average per game and 5.3 cards. You go forward to 2024 with our replacement officials, and you end up with an average, of course, across all of the match day number 1 statistics of 26.6 fouls and 3.7 cards per matches. If you're doing the math at home, I'll try to put this on the screen, but it really adds up to about 1.5 more foul calls per game, and a slight decrease in yellow cards. If you were expecting a foul fest, or the referees to be spamming yellow cards like Stone Cold Steve Austin hitting the ring in the Attitude Era, I think you were sorely disappointed. What you saw, for the most part, were competently officiated games that have the same things we complain about week in and week out with MLS officiating, and that is inconsistent application of the rules and just a horrid conspiracy against your favorite team so that you never get calls and you are forced to walk out of stadiums angry because for some reason the officials all around the world hate your team. That's the same as it was last year, the same as it was this year, the same as it will be next year. This is worth keeping an eye on as things go forward. I think match week number 1 is everyone feeling themselves out, teams, coaches, players, and officials, no different than that. Does this trend keep up for match week number 2? Do the officials keep things under control, keep things on the level, keep things at the level we're used to for MLS officiating? I see no reason why that's not going to be the case. It's a tough job, make no mistake, but there's no one that's been particularly good at it thus far. If the officials that are the replacement refs can continue this level of performance, I would argue it puts the PSRA in a very serious situation. Namely, that they have not been able to prove that they are necessary to MLS's product remaining watchable, entertaining, and free of controversy. The PSRA was banking on this week being a disaster. They pulled out all the stops this weekend, trying to put pressure on MLS to settle this. But here we find ourselves, with the PSRA in the untenable position of realizing that the league has moved on without them and nobody really misses them. People really want to see Lionel Messi play for Inter Miami. They want to see Cucho Hernandez for Columbus Crew. They want to see Luciano Acosta here in Cincinnati. Ain't nobody paying to see Chris Penso come to a match. I would predict that within the next couple of weeks we see a swift resolution to this labor dispute and that the PSRA end up with close to what the original announced deal was that they voted down en masse after the first round of bargaining ended on this matter. To me, this represents an opportunity for MLS to push the advantage even further. I would love for MLS to use this moment to its advantage and push the envelope. I would love to see the bargaining resume with a requirement that the PSRA conduct press conferences and media availability, just like players and coaches are forced to do after matches. I would love to see MLS be the first league to require referees to answer reporters directly on camera at the podium to account for poor calls or close calls. I think it would be a game changer for this league, and with the union now in the position of having to come back to the table minus leverage, it's the perfect opportunity for the league to try something new. Story number 2 in MLS this weekend is the CONCACAF Hangover is real. The season kicks off at the same time as CONCACAF Champions Cup. You can find a robust debate about this among some of the worst people you know on Twitter, advocating for and against changing the MLS schedule to accommodate international competitions like this. I guess there's just a lot of people that would really prefer to be watching soccer outdoors in Minnesota in January. If that's what they're into, more power to them. Regardless, the CONCACAF Champions League represents a real problem for MLS early in the season. It leads to fixture congestion that coaches complain about and causes all sorts of problems with teams doing international travel right as they're trying to launch the season and get legs into shape. The numbers weren't pretty for MLS in Matchweek number 1. Teams that played midweek in CONCACAF Champions League went winless, scoring 5 draws and 1 loss. This points to a larger problem with MLS, unfortunately, and that is that the roster rules are simply not set up to accommodate the type of tournament runs that CONCACAF Champions League requires. Here in Cincinnati, FC Cincinnati had to fly to Jamaica over 1,000 miles away on a Thursday, didn't touch back down until Friday morning, meaning that they wiped an entire day of training before having to turn around and play an MLS game on Sunday in the afternoon. This type of schedule requires larger rosters, it requires better players that you can bring in on rotation, and the current MLS salary structure just isn't set up to accommodate the type of rotation teams need to make in order to stay competitive in both cup tournaments and in MLS. This is in large part the same argument being made about the US Open Cup. Regardless of the situation, if MLS is going to keep putting itself in a situation where it has to play against quality opponents and fixture congested schedules, they need to open the roster rules up. They need to enable teams to buy better players, buy better depth, and make it so that you aren't turning to a homegrown player making less than a center referee when you need to rotate for a midweek game or bring on fresh legs in a league game after traveling across the continent to play games. Which brings us to point number 3. MLS Commissioner Don Garber, holding court around the Lionel Messi Fest on Sunday night, announced to reporters that a group of 12 owners would be meeting in Miami to discuss the future of the league and roster rules. This led to swirling rumor and speculation that the league might be accelerating its timetable for making roster changes that everyone expected during the winter meetings and off-season meetings this past December. Famously, MLS emerged from those meetings with no consensus on what to do going forward, and roster rules pretty much remaining status quo from the year before. However, we've seen comments and rumblings in recent days that all might not be well in MLSdom on this regard. Apple VP Eddie Q noted recently that they want to see MLS bring in more stars like Lionel Messi. Setting aside the absurdity of ever bringing in anyone like Lionel Messi, the point still remains. Apple saw a bump in subscribers to the MLS League Pass, which now counts more than 2 million members. It's eyeing a future where Lionel Messi no longer plays in this league and looking for the next big star. This was always the end game of MLS League Pass. Gone are the days where you could put a game on TV and the contract was signed and we don't really care who's watching. Now, MLS's value to Apple is only as much as people are willing to pay for it. They have hard numbers now on exactly how many of you are paying for MLS League Pass and how many people around the world are paying for MLS League Pass. By joining streaming television and all its revolutionary concepts, MLS has aligned itself with the line must go up territory of Netflix, Disney Plus, and other streaming platforms. Investors demand for all of these companies that they always see subscriber growth and revenue growth. The problem is there's only a finite number of people in the world that subscribe to streaming services, and eventually the line must stop going up. But Wall Street is undeterred. Apple is no different. Apple wants to see the line going up with MLS. They have found what they believe appears to be a foolproof way to make the line go up. Spend money on players that people want to see. If this all sounds very reasonable to you and very no-duh, yes. It turns out that when you sign superstar players, people tend to follow. It's how we consume sports content in modern society. People watching 15 to 30 second clips on YouTube, TikTok, and other places of superstars doing super things. MLS needs more of that. They need more people watching content of superstars and deciding that they want to watch them play full matches, which means signing up to MLS League Pass and letting the line go up. The meetings in Miami concluded after 2 days with no real movement, other than to say that a proposal may be put forth at the summer meetings around the MLS All-Star break. This was a blow to people who had thought that perhaps we might be seeing rule changes mid-season. I think that was always a pipe dream, but it wouldn't surprise me to find out that the MLS owners are going to vote on adding this additional designated player in the summer to give teams the opportunity to prepare for that additional signing. If they do it early enough, It will allow teams to contemplate through both the summer and winter window what their business will be when, in fact, an additional designated player slot is added. And adding a designated player slot isn't enough. As I said previously, the real problem with MLS right now isn't that they don't have enough stars. That's bad for Apple. But in terms of actual teams, the real problem is the inability and inflexibility of MLS salary to spend at the bottom of rosters, to bring in the types of players that can go on a Thursday, give competent minutes, and allow the starters to play on a Saturday or a Sunday. That's where MLS needs to focus. Unfortunately, that may have to wait for a new CBA. And wouldn't you know it, we're back to talking about unions and bargaining units. And I just don't think I've got that in me to do that again. Anyway, this is episode 1 of the MLS Basement. We'll be back next week to talk about 3 news stories and 3 new narratives swirling around the league. In the interim, make sure you like and subscribe to Post Cincy here on YouTube. Listen to the Cincy PostCast for FC Cincinnati content and beyond on wherever you get your podcasts. And from the basement, see you topside.